there in NAMI, Tennessee land. My name is Gabe Howard, and I'm here with another edition of NAMI at Home Facebook Live. Did you go to the walk on Saturday? It was incredible. It was super awesome. But if you missed it, there is still time to participate. Right there is the web address. You can donate. You can still form a little team. You can watch all of the very, very, very cool videos that happened. I'm telling you, it was awesome. Along those same lines, next week, same time, same place, we're going to have a walk update with our incredible walk manager, Anna. So be here and find out who our sponsors are, our top teams, our walk stars, and just learn everything that happened about the walk. Of course, you will already know all of this stuff if you sign up for NAMI Tennessee's email list, because that's where all the cool information is. You can sign up at namitn.org. I tell everybody this every week, so we really should just have millions upon millions of subscribers. But not yet. So please join NAMI Tennessee's email list at namitn.org. Of course, still time to participate in the walk at namiwalks.org/Tennessee. I want to remind everybody that your donations all stay in Tennessee, and we really, really, really appreciate all of your help. All right, enough of that. We have a super, super cool guest with us today. Caleb, welcome to the show.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Well, we are really, really jazzed that you are here. Can you tell the audience who you are?
Sure. My name is Caleb McLean. I am the fairly new IOV coordinator for NAMI Tennessee, and I am here to just talk about IOV.
Now, IOV stands for, whoops, I hit the wrong button. This happens in live shows. What does IOV stand for?
IOV stands for In Our Own Voice. It is a program that NAMI Tennessee and NAMI in general has for people who want to tell their story of recovery from mental illness. It's a very empowering program, allows people to really get out there and speak their own truth.
Now, one of the things that I think might pop into mind is, why do I need an In Our Own Voice training to talk about my story or to speak my own truth? And obviously, we're not saying that you need an In Our Own Voice training to do it. We're just saying that it offers certain benefits. Can you talk about what those benefits may be?
Sure. Not everyone is equipped to usually talk in a public setting. I mean, I used to not be. But the training allows people to learn not only our system, but it allows us to help you tell your story the best way you can. We don't change anything out of it. We don't put anything into it. We just help mold it into something that will be the best for you and help you get the most out of it.
Now, when you say mold it into who we are, and I think the question that I'm kind of driving at, Caleb, is like, what does a training look like? Now, I know that there's probably a virtual component right now because of COVID, but what does the training look like both in and out of COVID? What can somebody signing up for this expect?
Sure. I recently just did my own training since I'm fairly new, and it was a wonderful experience. Right now it is virtual, so you will be able to meet with your trainers virtually. We will go over a packet of information. We will talk about what happened, what's next, things of that nature. And it really gives you step-by-step information on how to plug it in. Because sometimes we have a lot of information in our heads that we want to get out. We just don't know how to order it. So this training really helps you order that information. It also allows you to present it to in-kind people in the training.
Is there like I'm kind of thinking in my head, and please, because I know this is going to be wrong. I think about my little niece who's 6 years old, and she's taking piano. So she's in with the other kids. She takes piano. She's learning the piano, and then the whole thing ends in like a piano recital. Now, I know this is much bigger than that, and you're learning, but everybody has to start somewhere. Is it kind of that vibe, that camaraderie, that learning, and then a big recital at the end?
It is. It is very much a camaraderie. The training I went through, we started as strangers. And after the 2 days of training, it was people that we want to present together as presenters. Our program goes with two individuals to any in the place that they want to go, that we send them. It's two individuals that present together. So at the end of this training, it was something that I had never met these people, but now I plan to speak with them. And so it does bring up the idea of, I don't know where I am, I don't know what I'm doing, but we find people that work well together. And sometimes one person could be better at their story, one person could be better at speaking at it. So people really give and take, and people also will complement each other. And it's something that you have to find in the training itself.
Now, you mentioned that two people go out to a typical In Our Own Voice presentation is two people who go out together. Now, when you say two people who go out together, are they on stage at the same time, both telling their story in tandem, or does one person go for a set amount of time and then introduce the second? What does it look like presentation-wise to the audience seeing those two folks?
It's a good question. Virtually or in person, it is the same. There'll be two presenters. Either one can choose either to be one or two. And so they will introduce themselves, and then the presenter one will introduce presenter two. And there are videos that go in place of the areas in between. So they'll do introductions, a video set, then they will talk about what happened, which is their story, what went on, what mental illness did they come from. Then after both of them present, there'll be another section of videos and so forth. So there's 4 sections and 4 times for the individuals to speak.
Now, is it an hour long? Am I getting that correct? So if you book an In Our Own Voice presentation, is it an hour?
It can be. It can be anywhere from 40 to 90 minutes. It just depends.
Gotcha.
It doesn't have to be a full set time. And that's what happens in the training too. We have certain times that the training modules allow you, and in the training, we'll take turns timing each other and making sure that we fit, because we want to make sure everyone has enough time to say what they need, but we also want to be mindful of the time of the venue. But usually that's all worked out in the training, and it's never really an issue.
Now, I'm thinking about the venue. So is this something where somebody contacts, for NAMI Tennessee, they probably contact you, Caleb, and say, hey, I want a couple people with lived experience with mental illness to come out and talk to us. How does that all look? How do you book the presentations? How do you get us gigs, Caleb?
That is a good question. So they would contact me, or if someone has been trained and they are contacted directly, then they can tell me also. And I will, work on connecting them with the proper people. Sometimes people find that, hey, I don't want to go to this sort of place. I don't feel comfortable talking to this demographic. And that's what I make sure, that I don't send someone who's not comfortable yet speaking to a certain demographic. So that's where my job comes in, of really helping the people go to the place that they can feel the most comfortable and get the most out of themselves, as long also with the venue.
Now, when I think about venues, the thing that keeps popping into my mind are like corporate events, but there's a whole big world outside of corporate events who need education and training. Who are some of the I don't want to say clients. Who are some of the hosts for In Our Own Voice presentations?
Sure. They can be area churches. We do police stations. We can do schools. We can do any organization that just wants somebody to come in and guest. It's really any organization that wants to better help them understand mental illness and living in mental illness and living in recovery. And so there's really not a you can or you can't be a part of this. That's just when I would contact them and just have a conversation about what they're looking for.
And I know that you have your own email address, but for Expedia's sake, if you are looking to host an In Our Own Voice presentation, you can email info@namitn.org. It will be forwarded to Caleb, and he will contact you. And again, this is something that's free. It's free for everybody, right? And
there's only a caveat to it.
Okay, I knew there was a catch.
Not a bad catch, but you need to be in 6 months in recovery from a mental illness. is really one of the main things. And there's an application process that you can get sent, and then we can have a conversation too about what it is. And that's really the biggest thing that I want to make sure, because we want to make sure that you're in a place where you feel comfortable telling your story. If you're not, that's fine, and we can definitely come back when you are. But I just don't want you, if you feel not fully up to it, to get in front of people and be, somewhere uncomfortable. And so if you're in 6 months in recovery, that's pretty much the biggest thing.
Very awesome. Now, let's go back to the actual training first. How long is the training?
The training is about 2 days.
Okay.
The training I went.
The
training I went through was around. It's a couple hours, 8 to 1, virtually right now, and that can vary from state to state. But we do about 2 days, usually a Saturday and Sunday, and it will be just virtually right now on Zoom. And you get together with the trainers. They will send you a copy of the training book. I have it in front of me right now, and you just walk through it. And previously, before you do that, there is an online component. So you must complete that first. And once you contact me and we get together through the application process, I will put your name into our NAMI system, and that will send you an email for you to complete that first. That's the part where you learn about the videos, you write down your story, your actual script first, and then you bring it to the next training in person. That's where we really get into it and mold it together.
So let's talk about telling our stories. So I know that you can't do the training right now because it takes 2 days, and we don't have 2 days on the NAMI Facebook Live or NAMI at Home Facebook Live. But is there some general hints and tips? If somebody was sitting at home watching this right now and it's like, I do want to tell my story, or if they're anything like me, somebody just said, "Hey, Gabe, do you want to talk about living with bipolar disorder?" And I was like, "Sure." I didn't even think about what questions to ask or get training, or I just, my eyes got big and I was like, okay, what are some general hints and tips that you can give to people who are considering sharing their story, but maybe don't have time for In Our Own Voice or aren't in an area that offers it?
I would just say that, you don't necessarily have to be a part of us to tell your story, but if you want to be, that's where we'll take you. With the training, it is just something that helps you get it out on paper. I feel that sometimes it's all jumbled up in our heads a lot. And so if we get it out on paper, it really is a therapeutic kind of way to do it. Also telling your story, sometimes there's examples, example of someone telling their story, and it might be in a different order than it should be. They put all the good stuff in the front and then the bad stuff at the end. When we could go to the training and say, well, how about we switch it? How about we put the bad stuff first and then show the good stuff of how you made it through? In my training myself, I had a lot of stuff in the very end when it talks about moving forward. That's really the point to brag on yourself. And no one likes to brag on themselves a lot. And through the training, they said, yes, put all this stuff in, show them how much better life is now that you are in recovery and what you did. It won't work for everybody, but how is it working for you?
Let's talk about, I love how you craft a story, and I love how In Our Own Voice crafts a story. Bad stuff at the beginning, hope at the end. It sort of reminds me of every band in the world that ends with their biggest hit. No band ends with their worst song, the one that didn't make the Billboard charts, ruined their career. No. They end with their hits. Can you explain why that's so important from a storytelling perspective, from a speaker's perspective?
Sure. I think from a storytelling perspective, it's in our DNA to do that. In the books we read and the movies we watch, we start off and then we get to the climax. And a lot of the stories, some of the stories I heard in my training were very emotional. They've gone through a lot of stuff, and it's almost sitting on the edge of your seat of saying, how in the world did you go through all these things and you're standing in front of me today? And so you want to build them up that way, not to manipulate them or anything like that, but to show them that it was pretty bad. And then to go through to the resolve of showing them that it might have been bad then, but I am the one that has persevered from this. And this is how I am succeeding, because someone could be watching and sitting there and be in that bad zone of where you were. And then they see that, and that gives them hope to say, if they can do it, I can do it.
I like the idea of ending with, I like that you said it was in our DNA, right? Because you're right. I mean, just every movie has a happy ending. Now some are happier than others, but there's always a conclusion. Do you feel that this is counterintuitive to this conclusion or happy ending? I'm only asking because I know when I first started, I wanted to end with all of this hope, but I didn't want to create this idea that mental illness was somehow over for me. It is true that portion of the story was over, and I wanted to create all of this hope around, reaching recovery and what I've achieved, but I didn't want to create this unrealistic expectation or goal that now it's done, that I no longer, suffer the effects. Has that been a challenge that you've seen in Our Own Voice, or with the presenters, or even with yourself?
I haven't seen that necessarily for myself. Like I said, in the ending portion, you just want to say that you're moving on and keep it kind of simple. But I think, yes, we don't want to we don't want to put across that mental illness is over, because it's something we're always going to live with. But it's something about a chapter in your life. It's something about how we are going to that place. That it's something that we're going to keep with us, but we're never going to be without. So in Our Own Voice, it almost, as many times as you tell your story, if you go, you can retell your story, and you might edit it a little bit and find new things to say. But it's not about showing that it's over. It's showing about it's still continuing, but you're not letting it be over you.
I really love that. Thank you so much, Caleb. Now, the next thing that I'm thinking about is, do you have to memorize this word for word? I know that my memory is, I'm a middle-aged man who takes I'm a middle-aged man. I can't remember why I walked into the kitchen some days. So remembering a 15, 20, 30-minute speech seems impossible. Is being able to memorize your speech like it's a monologue a requirement of In Our Own Voice?
It is not. And I will say I am the same way. I cannot remember what I'm watching during a commercial break. You do not have to memorize it. You can put it on a paper. You can put it on a note cards if you'd like, just the way the outline is. But I will say that since it is something you have written and it is your story, you have a better chance of telling it. And more to that point, the trainers, we don't want you to say it verbatim. Sometimes we want it like a conversation like we're having now. So even if you want to put bullet points, we really put it out in a big script to just get it all out there. And then we want to make sure, like we're doing now, just having a conversation, because people who are watching can tell if you're talking to them or talking at them. And so we want to make it as a conversation.
Let's talk about this for a moment. One of the things that people ask me for advice, like, Gabe, do you have any advice to be a speaker? And of course, I have all kinds of advice. I could talk about this forever. It's one of my favorite subjects. But one of the biggest things that I tell people is don't lie. Don't lie, don't embellish, don't exaggerate. The audience can spot BS a mile away. And if you do not connect with them, it doesn't matter how technically sound you are, how proficient, if you have a smoke machine or lasers, they'll just think that you're fake. Is that a big component of In Our Own Voice, getting people comfortable with the truth? Because once again, I give this advice because when I started, I wanted to be more exciting. I wanted to Hollywood it up, but nobody likes that. It's counterintuitive. Nobody liked it.
Yeah, I think it's something where we want it to be the truth, and we don't want it to be an exaggerated truth or a made up truth. We want it to be your truth. And I think that will come through in the way that you tell it. And through the training, you can kind of figure that out, because in the training also, members are able to give you constructive feedback to say, well, I wish you would have said this, maybe slow down like this. But just telling it yourself, and you have a story and you have things that you've gone to that probably someone watching it like myself would have their jaw on the floor and wonder, how are you standing today? And that's where you get to tell them, this is how I did it for me.
I want to, we have Caleb here, and I don't want to miss the opportunity. Let's talk about your personal story for a moment. I know we don't have time to do the whole presentation, and I certainly wouldn't put you on the spot and ask you to, but can you give us, as much as you're comfortable, I mean, a 2, 3, 5 minute portion of your story to let folks know, or just to model what you have learned?
Sure. I have been diagnosed with depression and anxiety for a long time now. Ironically enough, I'm a therapist by day. I'm a master's level social worker. So I really went into the field to not only learn about myself, but to help others that I feel are going through this. So during the school year, I work for a company called STARS, and we go into area schools we're contracted in. And so also with NAMI was kind of, when I found In Our Own Voice, it was almost like a connection between worlds that I didn't know happened. It was public speaking, which I enjoy, and mental health. So going through that, and then really at first going to the outside of just saying, well, I'm the coordinator, I'm going to do this and that. But when I actually went through the training itself, it was so much more. It was helpful to me because I thought, well, I'm just going to do the bare minimum. But then having to actually write out my story and the things that I've gone through was really freeing for myself personally. So that's why I can speak to it the way I do, because I've gone through the training myself. And we want to make sure that it is something that is truthful, and we want to make sure that it is something that's going to help. So it's definitely helped for me.
So you're a therapist by day, and you're an In Our Own Voice presenter by night. Are you Batman? I've never seen you both in the same room at the same time. This is to switch gears ever so slightly, because you brought up that you are a therapist. Do you find it therapeutic? And I know you can't speak, in absolutes, et cetera, but do you find that the people that you work with find this therapeutic to share their story publicly? Is there a positive benefit to being so open?
I believe so. In what I've seen, and speaking for myself and the people that I have worked with, I think there is a benefit to speaking it out. And like I said before, writing it down and getting it out of your head. When we speak about it, I think it loses its power. And so showing that mental illness is not this monster in a closet, this, whatever we feel it is, it's something that is every day, and people are thriving and succeeding. That's really, I think, the crux of In Our Own Voice.
Obviously, I believe very strongly in sharing our stories, and there was a period of time where I didn't. I hid it. I was open about it. I was fired from my job, so I got another job and just zipped my mouth shut. I needed work, and it felt very I like constraining. Every time somebody said something, I had to like run this thing through my head. Like, is it okay to talk about? Will that give away my secret? Am I truly friends with these people? Am I lying to them? I mean, just because you don't walk up to somebody and say, hi, I have a mental health issue, that's not the same as lying, right? Well, but why are you censoring yourself? Why are you even thinking about it? And just instead of actually bonding with people, I was trying to figure out why I wasn't bonding with people. It was a lot. That said, it's not for everybody, right? Is there any, I don't want to say warning label, but is there any discussion about some of the, negatives or drawbacks to being open with your story when somebody's applying for In Our Own Voice?
I think that definitely in your personal life, if you are at a point where you want to share your story outside of any organization, to make sure that the people you're sharing with are ready themselves to accept it, because that can be something that is a rocky start. But within Our Own Voice, if there comes a time in the training where you're saying, this is too much, I'm reliving this stuff too much, even if you are so far out in recovery, or if you're not able to work through the public speaking aspect of it, there's definitely a time where we will say, one-on-one, we'll talk about it, and then if you're not ready for it, we'll welcome you the next time, and when you're ready. We don't want anyone just to come up and just check a box. So if it comes to that point, but as far as a warning label, it's just to know that there are going to be questions from the participants that are listening, and the training does walk you through how to gear it towards certain audiences. And to make sure that we're talking for ourselves. We don't speak for everyone. We say, this is how it worked for me. Because you'll get those questions about, well, should I take this medicine that you mentioned? Should I do this religious practice you mentioned? And we can't really say you should, but you can just talk about what worked for you.
I like that. And I think it's extraordinarily important. I have a saying when I speak. I say, when you've met a person living with bipolar disorder, you've met one person living with bipolar disorder. So while this has certainly been my experience, it was my experience 18 years ago. Things have changed since I was diagnosed. The world has moved forward. Medicine has progressed. Thinking has progressed. So the resources that I utilized, one may not be the best resources anymore, or may not be available anymore. So if I just told everybody, hey, you should do the following 3 things, I'm not sure that would have been good advice for everybody back in 2003, just because it worked for me. But I happen to know for a fact it's not good advice now. There's so many resources that just simply did not exist for me. And it's important to leave room for those. Let's talk about, so somebody signs up. They sign up to be an In Our Own Voice presenter. They go through the training. Now, are they legally bound to be an In Our Own Voice presenter after they take the training?
They're not. There can be times when we call you and you're saying, I can't do it today. And that's the beauty of the program. You don't sign your life away or anything. We just, ask that you have a commitment if you do want to be a part of it. If you can't, to let us know. But there's no sort of ill will given to you if you say at the last minute after we've gone through the whole training, well, I don't want to. You still have the training, and we're always welcome with open arms.
I think that's so important. For me, I look at barriers. You described a lot of people maybe haven't told their story before. They might be nervous, et cetera. And if somebody is considering, emailing Caleb at info@namitennessee.org, I'll just pop that right on the screen right now, and signing up for it. I know that we can find so many reasons not to do it. Well, I don't. I don't want to. I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't understand how this works. No, they're going to force me to do it. No, NAMI's going to. So let's talk about some of those barriers for a moment. I know I probably just named, all the main ones, making this an even harder question for you to answer, Caleb. But what are some things that you would just like to address with folks so that if they're teetering back and forth, they're not afraid to contact you and get more information?
Sure. Being nervous about it is pretty standard, and that's okay. There are people that I've contacted to check on, and they say, well, life is being really busy right now. I don't have time for it. And that's fine. Until the next time that they are able to, I'll keep your name on the list. There are people who decide to move on from the program, and that's fine too. We always want to harbor a feeling of welcomeness. If you're not comfortable yet, if you haven't told your family about your story, that could be an issue. So I would think about that first, because you'll be telling your story to different people. So you want to make sure you're in a place where if there's information you need to tell, and in the presentations, we don't necessarily go into full graphic detail. We want to make sure that we keep it to the level of the participants that are listening. So we want to make sure we get the emotion and the feeling across. So if you're still in a point where your, quote, scars are still fresh, then you want to make sure that you're not harming yourself by going up and speaking. You want to get into a place. And that's definitely something that you and I can have a conversation about. In the training, you can have a conversation about that. We want to make sure it's safe. And we also keep the 2 presenters to make sure that we have someone up there with us. So it doesn't feel like it's just me the whole time that has to do something. We have two people to help kind of share the emotional load of being in front of a group of people.
Thank you. I do strongly believe in safety in numbers, and I really like that that's the way that it's structured. And of course, you bring up that that's why it's structured that way. I think that's very, very valuable. One of the things that you mentioned is that there's questions from the audience. Now, this can be extraordinarily scary. What type of training does In Our Own Voice have to help the presenters handle the questions that are going to come their way? Because audiences are absolutely unpredictable.
They are. In the training I went through, what happens is when you're presenting a mock presentation, like you're doing it for real, the trainers I had actually asked questions, and they put these questions that have been asked before, and they're not easy questions, and they want to see where you're at and how you can and focus on that. But in the training itself also, there is a formula, a CARE formula. That's an acronym that I don't have off the top of my head just right now, but it kind of shows you how to answer a question of making sure that you have the question correctly that they're asking, and then answering it in a way that doesn't make them feel bad for asking it. If it's a general question about you, you're the expert on yourself. But if it's a question about methods or medication, just to really revert that to say that, it's not something that we can talk about, but it only worked for me. Other questions can be anything. If you think of it, you'll get it. And so that too is also to be able to speak however you need to, and also have the freedom to say, I don't know. There's a lot of freedom in saying that to a question. It's not something like we said, it's not a lie, you just don't know. And that allows you to answer it, but not in the same way.
Caleb, thank you so much for your candor and for being open. I have to ask, just because I want to know, what's the best question that you've ever received?
Oh, gosh.
Or the coolest or the funniest or the most memorable? You can fill in any words you want there. What's the question that stands out?
I think it's just really something, in my personal story, talking about religion and things like that. And a question about saying, well, if I went to church and my pastor blessed this out of me, is that the same way? I can't really say yes or no to that, because it's not something in the boundaries of that, but also I don't want to demean your practices of thinking that you're in recovery from your mental illness. So that's kind of the range of where it's gotten. There have never been really any terrible or any awful ones, because a lot of people don't know what to ask either. They're sitting there and they're, just as confused about mental illness. And that's part of the reason why you're there, to help make them more aware of what it is. And so I would just give you the advice of being ready for anything.
I know that our minds immediately go to the worst case scenario, right? And that's, remember the Muppets, where they throw raw fruits and vegetables at you. Like, where did they get this? They just brought them to the theater. And then there's this giant hook. I don't know where they get this hook either. It's got like a 45-foot, and they just drag you off the stage. Please reassure our audience that nobody actually brings fruits and vegetables to any In Our Own Voice presentation.
I have not heard anything about that from any of the presentations. I have heard nothing but good things about the presentation itself when it is asked about them. There's always going to be a level of learning in this. You're not going to be the best on your first one. I wasn't, but that's what the practice goes through, and that's okay. You'll find when you're going through each time you present it, that you'll decide and you'll feel more comfortable doing it. So don't think that you have to be some great scholar or presenter on your very first time. Just talk to them. Just talk to the people. That's why they want you there. That's why. And so if you know that you're wanted, it makes it a lot easier.
Caleb, thank you so very much. I know we're nearing the end. I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to bring up everything about In Our Own Voice that the audience possibly needs. I don't want you to become an infomercial, but at the same time, I do want you to become like a small commercial for In
Sure.
Our Own Voice.
Yeah, I would just say that we'll welcome anyone that is 18 or over that is in 6 months of recovery from their mental illness. If you aren't sure, you can definitely contact me and we can have a conversation about it. If you're almost sure, you can contact me as well. There's always a space for anyone who wants to tell their story. I will take on numerous people. There's no limit to the number of people that I can have because this is statewide. If it's not just in the Nashville area, it's not in the Memphis or Chattanooga area. We want it all over the state to be able to have Tennessee be one of those states that does recognize mental illness and has people going out to organizations to help teach mental illness to the population.
Caleb, thank you so much. And I want to remind everybody that, of course, In Our Own Voice is free. It's free to be trained. It's free to have a presentation. It's free, right? But of course, even though everything that NAMI Tennessee offers is free, we still have to pay for it somehow. And right now, we just completed our NAMI walk last Saturday. You can still participate. Just head over to namiwalks.org/Tennessee. You can also see videos with all the cool things that folks did on Saturday. And I want to remind everybody that next Monday, which is Memorial Day, there is a live with Anna, our walk manager, who's giving updates on everything. And she is super cool, and she knows everything about NAMI Tennessee's walk. Caleb, this was a lot of fun. Do you have any other words of wisdom to pass on about storytelling, about being our authentic selves? I mean, this is your time, sir.
I would just say if you haven't tried it, to try it. If you've been thinking about it, if you've been thinking about talking with your loved ones, if you've been thinking about talking with your friends, to understand that there is so much freedom in being able to take it out of ourselves and show that you are who you are. You're not what your mental illness says you are. So to be able to live in that freedom is something I can't explain to you. And definitely reach out, definitely go to the NAMI website. We're not necessarily something that's going to be therapeutic in the way of a therapist, but we're going to be working together in harmony to be able to get you to a point in life where you can feel comfortable talking to anyone about who you are.
That's awesome. Now, Caleb, something just popped into my brain, and this is real insight into how my mind works. In Our Own Voice, you talked a lot about people living with mental illness telling their stories. Now, is In Our Own Voice available for caregivers as well? Where's that piece? Because obviously those stories are vital in our community too.
Sure. So In Our Own Voice is geared towards people who are living in mental illness. Caregivers necessarily, they could be part of the participants that listen. But as long as you have a mental illness, then you can be a part of it. We want to keep it that way to have people that are in the walk. Because if you've never dealt with it, it's hard to talk about something you haven't dealt with. So we want to make sure that everyone has a voice.
Now, if you are a friend or family member of somebody living with mental illness, is there like an In Our Own Voice adjacent? Is there another opportunity, a speakers bureau or anything like that at NAMI Tennessee?
We have tons of other programs. I think there are some that are geared towards caregivers. I would just suggest that you check out the NAMI Tennessee website. There is tons of information about any of the other programs that deal with caregivers specifically.
I know you get these questions because you work for NAMI Tennessee, so I knew that you could help. You can, of course, email info@namitn.org. NAMI Tennessee survives and thrives on volunteerism. So if you have free time and you want to help, I guarantee that somebody at NAMI Tennessee can find something for you to do that is meaningful and helpful. And we appreciate all of our volunteers, and we just can't thank you enough. Caleb, thank you so much for being here. We really appreciate it. I'm going to give the quick shout out again. Of course, everybody that watches this week to week knows what I'm going to say. Join NAMI Tennessee's email list. Just go to namitn.org, which one is our website, mean, there's just so much information there, right? But also on that page is the email list. We send out emails with advocacy information, walk information, volunteer information, and also things that are happening in the community as it pertains to living with, caring for, loving someone, or advocating for mental illness. It really is one-stop shopping for the mental health community. Plus, it's just a super cool email. I mean, you're missing out. That's just NAMITN.org. Thank you, everybody. And remember, 1 week from today is Anna. Anna will be giving a walk update. This is the last time I'll ask, I promise. Head over to NAMIWalks.org/Tennessee. We're still accepting donations. We're still accepting support. And there's all kinds of very cool videos for everything that happened on Walk Day. But same time, same place. And we will see everybody here next week. Thanks, everyone.